My name is Isak Sachet E. Telewish. That means good lad, plenty good. My great-grandmother's name was Plenty Good, and so we're reclaiming that name as it passed away with her. And so that first name, Good Lad, I got that from my clan uncle a long time ago, and so I try to carry that in a good way. My English name is Ross Brain, and I work as the tribal liaison here at the University of Washington, the Huskies. And basically what I do there is work with the tribes, work with the administration, and try to get it to intermingle at some point. Yeah, I think that's about it.
My Haida name is Gladai, and there's no actual translation into an English word for that, but the meaning of Gladai is, the way it was explained to me is that you are able to endure a lot of things coming from a lot of different ways. So the way it was, like I said, was told to me by an elder was that it's similar to being deep down in water. When you're deep down in water, the deeper you go, the more pressure there is, and so the more pressure you can endure and fight through, and so that's where my name came from. And I'm Haida from Southeast Alaska. My family's from Heidelberg, we're Kaigani Haida. I grew up in the Seattle area. Went to the University of Washington, work here now. I graduated here in 2006, and I've been working as the tribal recruiter, Native American Alaska Native recruiter coordinator for the University of Washington. And so I travel to all the tribal reservations, east, west, north, south, all over the state of Washington, a little bit into Idaho, some Montana and Oregon. And so we're here today to give you a little piece of our mind and our experience and where we've been and where we would like to see things go as far as Native Americans, Indian education, and higher education.
I forgot to state that I'm Abzalogay Crow from Southeast Montana, a member of the Big Lodge Clan and the Nighthawk Society. I guess we're going to just kind of make this more of a conversation piece. What we're going to discuss is middle school plan, the medical school plan, and so I think that's mostly Tommy, and then what I'll discuss is my interactions with the after school, out of school programs in the Seattle Public School District, as well as our recruitment and how that works and ties together, the Longhouse project we've got going, and so basically we'll talk about recruitment, retention, and graduation of students from middle school through, college. Do you want to start?
Yeah, and so I guess it all kind of starts with my own personal story. I grew up, like I said, here in the Seattle area. Went to Renton High School, which the mascot is Indians, and so I was the only Native in the whole school, other than a few relatives that I had going there. And so, there's a lot of identity issues because I'm also mixed with Filipino, and so it's something I'm proud of. We call ourselves Indipinos in this area, and so all through high school, went through high school, was a good student, wasn't a bad student, just didn't try hard enough, didn't have a lot of motivation. And so it wasn't until my senior year that my advisor, Indian Ed advisor, Erlene Bela, who's a great mentor for me even to this day, brought me into her office, explained to me, or asked me, what am I going to do for college? What am I going to do after high school? And so I told her, I want to go to college. But I didn't prepare myself. I didn't take the SATs. I had a below 3.0 GPA, and I was just kind of devastated because I didn't realize I had all these things to do. And so she is the one person in my life that I could say, other than my family, that really had an impact on where I am today, because she taught me about the traditional, non-traditional route going to community college. And so I went to community college, got a fresh start. Got my AA degree, transferred to the University of Washington, and then got my degree in sociology. And so that one instance of her bringing me into her office was huge, and I know that's a lot of that's the case for a lot of Native students. They don't have a lot of support at home, even if you do get support at home, because I did get support at home. I just didn't know how to navigate the college system, and so that's kind of where I got involved with Indian education. And so while I was an undergrad, I started tutoring Native students in the Seattle School District with Hachusa. And so I worked mainly with middle school students, and that was my first contact with Indian education. And so one of the biggest themes that I always would see it, and so the way it worked is that students or counselors or teachers would call Hachusada, which is the Indian education program for the Seattle Public School District, and they would contact them if they had a Native student who they felt was struggling, needed extra help, and so forth. And so once they would call, I would go out there as a college student. I would go to the school and tutor students. And so what I would find in a lot of these students was that they were very smart, they were very bright, they were very outgoing. Not at first, because a lot of Native students, you know, they sort of wear a mask, and they don't always let their emotions, their feelings out there. And so for non-natives, they feel that they're behind as far as education wise, and so they're quick to point them to special education. They're quick to ask them for other types of things like that. And so you know, that was something, and they would tell me that before I would meet the student. And so once I met the student, you know, I would take the time to meet them, get to know them, let them know who I am, let them know my hobbies, things like that. And it really opened them up, and it really engaged them in the education and whatever the subject was, whether it was math, science, reading, or whatnot. And so that was just one of my first, like I said, contact with Indian education. And from that point on, I knew that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to work with Native students. I know, especially here in the city where there's not a lot of Native teachers, a lot of Native counselors, there needs to be a liaison or somebody there that is able to teach these counselors and teachers, you know, how to deal with these students, because they don't know. It's still, you know, fairly new. A lot of natives are, you know, it's not as common for them to come to the city and live in the city. They're still, you know, on their tribal lands, you know, and so it's still a new, fairly new cultural, I guess, relevancy that needs to be learned by a lot of teachers in the public schools. And so that's where I started, you know, like I said, tutoring Native students, which also, Hachusada is also part of, they also do an after-school program. And so a lot of the students that I tutored in their high schools would come to this after-school program, in which they were able to do cultural activities, they would do tutoring, obviously, and just different types of things. And so I think that was very important, and I'll go into more detail about that, of, you know, why after-school programs are important. But I think I'll just leave it up to Ross, and he could explain how he got to where he is today.
Thanks. So I grew up on both the Northern Cheyenne and the Crow reservations in southeast Montana, and so I used to go to school off the res, or I went to the preschool on the res, Can-Do Center. We made it, and then after I left there, we'd take our bus out to Colstrip, Montana, and you know, it was quite a exercise. I'd have to get up at 4:30, I think, in the morning, and get on the bus, and then we'd drive all the way to Colstrip and all the way home at the end of the day. And so, like Tommy was saying, we kind of keep quiet, and so that's how I was when I was at Pine Butte Elementary School. And what they had told me is, they're like, well, maybe he needs to go into special ed. But my professor, or my teacher, saw that I was advanced, and so they put me into literature, which is for gifted and talented. And after I did that, they tried to skip me 2 grades. And so just building on what Tommy said about what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, over referral to special ed is definitely something that could have happened to me, and then I would have just been put in a special ed class. The problem was everything was boring, it was slow. My parents taught me how to read at a young age. I did math. We used to play school at my house, so my mom was different that way. I had my own school desk at the house, and we'd play school. So I'd do homework, is what she was making me do. And so once I moved to Seattle, I skipped a bunch of my story, but I moved to Seattle to go to UW. And then I met one of my mentors, and his name was Julian Argel. And he gave me my first job here at the University of Washington as a professional. At that point, I had taken a break, stepped out of school, and so I decided to start working for him, and he gave me a job as an office assistant. I slowly moved up the ladder, and then he goes, you know, you better get your degree. because you need it if you're going to start recruiting these kids for Educational Talent Search, which is a federal TRIO program. If you're going to start recruiting these kids to go to college, you better have your own degree. So I went to school full time and worked full time, and thanks to his support, I got through it. Me and my girlfriend Megan, we got through it, and I got my degree. At that time, I had figured I better start giving back, so I started to volunteer with an after-school program in the Seattle Public Schools. It was not Hachusida, but it was a different program. And then I was lucky enough and blessed to have another great mentor there. Her name is Sarah Sense Wilson. She taught me a lot how to interact with the urban native population, since I'd come from a res to a border town to a country town to the city. I hadn't grown up here, so she taught me how to interact with our families here. So what we do with that group is we would just, for the first hour, always food, we'd always have food, so we'd eat and feed the kids. Sometimes this is the only times they'd eat. After school, they'd eat lunch and that would be it. So we'd feed them first, and we'd go through the first hour would be tutoring. So we'd do English, math, science, everything that we could do. Some of us spoke French, so we'd do French class. And so that's what we do for the first hour. The second hour was cultural, or is cultural. That's what they do still. The second hour is cultural. That could be beadwork, singing, storytelling. That's a big thing up here in the Northwest that I learned, is that storytelling is very important and very substantial to our students here. And so I love that we're able to talk story with them and teach them how this math problem is related to one of our stories. So it worked, and we had a graduation rate of 100%, still do. And so that program is completely independent of the school district. It has great parent involvement, which you've got to have. There was the greatest amount of public support, public school support, but the families pushed and drove for it. And those of us who were involved with tutoring, it was great. It is great. I love to see those students, and that graduation rate that speaks for itself. And so the tutoring aspect, Western, our way, and then we'd always open and close with prayer. So those kind of programs can be replicated fairly easily, but the hardest part is getting parent involvement. We had to tell them, every single time, this isn't a daycare. This isn't a place for you just to drop your child. You should come in too. And I've met a few more crows from this experience. I've been teaching them how to make their drumsticks. They're going to start hunting with me. So it's really exciting to get these people from the urban area who are still us. So we all come together and we go and do these important traditions together. And so that's the after school, out of school program that we focus on. And that's the model that we'll be talking mostly about today. We refer to after school, out of school programming. But then while they're going through the program, we have Tommy come and start to recruit them. And then I guess Tommy would be is the man at recruiting. We talk about this all the time. Folks ask us, where did you learn to do your job? Where did you learn to do your job? And we say, we kind of just did it.
Taught ourselves.
Exactly.
No, a lot of it comes from the wisdom of elders, people who've been there before. Administrators here are not native, and so you really do have to be native in order to understand the culture, to understand the being quiet, not being the one to raise their hand. And it goes back to what Ross was saying. When he came from the reservation to a school, he was put in a setting where he was the only person. I was the same way. I grew up in the city, and so I was a little bit more comfortable with being the only native in the classroom. But it affects students, and it affects them. You just think about it. Think about it in a different race. If African American student goes into a all-white classroom, they're not going to be raising their hand as every question the teachers, there's going to be a level of uncomfortable, feeling and out of place, and especially for young students. And so I think that's important to know, where a lot of this, where teachers could get the idea that this student's special ed because they're not trying as hard, they're not in a comfortable learning environment. And as educators, the environment is always one of the biggest keys of learning. And so if you're, especially if you know that the teacher's asking or referring you to special ed, that's going to make you feel like you're not smart. That's going to make you feel uncomfortable. It's going to make you self-conscious. It's just going to do a lot of different things, and that's going to affect your schoolwork. And so I think that's important to realize that and point that out, that when there's students, especially if they're coming from reservation areas like Ross, if a lot of students are starting to move to the city. Like I said, that's becoming more prevalent now in these days. And so just being able to realize that and identify that, and not just be so quick to point them into special ed or into anything else. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. And so on another note that Ross was talking about was, like I said, I'm an urban Indian, and so once I started working here at the University of Washington, I was able to travel to all the different reservations. And so my tribe is in Alaska, which is, we don't have reservations in Alaska, at least they don't call them. They're similar, they look exactly the same, but I just wasn't raised in that area. I knew my culture. I was raised with my culture that my grandma passed down to my mom, passed down to me. And so it was a good experience working with Ross, and he really gave me a lot of information on how to approach things on the reservation with the tribal leaders, with things like that. And so it's really important to understand those types of things, because it is a different culture. Even though we're native, if you grew up in the city, you have a different, I wouldn't say culture, but in a way it is a different culture. It is a different way of life. And so, we still have the same type of issues with drugs, alcohol, health issues, things like that. We're just in a different setting. And so it's important for people to understand the difference between an urban Indian and a reservation Indian, and keep that in mind, especially for teachers and counselors and so forth. And so on top of what Clear Sky does, they're more focused on a little bit older students. And so the program that I worked with was through Hachusada, and so they mainly focused on elementary school kids. And so what I liked about that was that they did a lot of projects on their tribe, on whatever their tribe was. And so these are kids in Seattle School District. It's K through 5 is elementary school, and so it's up to 5th grade. And so for a lot of urban Indian students, they don't know their culture. Their culture, and it's not their fault, it's not their parents' fault, it's not their grandparents' fault, it's due to boarding schools. That has a long history and long ingrained trauma into our families. And so they don't know their tribe, and they feel that because they don't know their tribe, they don't feel like they should identify themselves as native. And so because they're mixed with other tribes. And so what I liked about Hachusada is that they would do projects with these students, with these younger students, 3rd, 2nd, 4th grade, and they would do a project with them. They would do, light research, because they're younger kids, they can't do, really in-depth research about it, but, they just learned about it, and it really sparked an interest, it sparked a pride in them. Like I said, it developed a very comfortable learning environment for them, and that's why after-school programs, in my opinion, is so important, because it's developing a comfortable learning environment with people who are from the same background as them, even though they might be different tribes with different cultures, because every tribe's different. They're with people that they can relate to, and so it develops a good learning environment. They're able to get their work done. They're able to learn about their culture. They're able to do fun things, meet new friends, things like that. And so it was really a great program. And so they only offer it up until because they're just so short-staffed, and the Seattle School District is huge. they could only offer it for elementary school kids. And so Clear Sky, they work with the middle school and high school kids, which is great, but there's still a lot of students out there that are missing out on this. And so we need to try to figure out how to capture them and encourage more students to get involved with these after-school programs. Not just to get help with their school, but also to learn about their culture, because a lot of urban Indians, like I said, aren't as connected to their culture as ones that are coming from the reservation. So the after-school programs are they're very good for elementary school kids. They help them to become more engaged, more involved in their culture. Especially like I said, for those students coming from the urban area, from the city, and might not know as much about their culture. And so that gives them a sense of self-identity. And so like I said earlier, for those students who are coming from the urban area, they're not as connected. They have identity issues. I had that identity issue when I was in high school, and so a lot of times I would tell people I was only Filipino. I wouldn't tell them I was Native, just because I didn't want to be singled out. I didn't want to have those odd questions of, oh, you live in a teepee and you ride a horse, and all the stereotypical things that come along with telling people who know nothing about Native people, when you tell them you're Native. And so, I think that's why it's very important to focus on culture, not only all the time, but mainly when they're younger, so they develop that self-identity. Middle school, that way you can, they start having that identity, then you can start focusing more on the academics, helping them with their tutoring and things like that, and that carries on into high school. And so that's why I'm really, I would like to focus on middle school students, because I feel like that's a big gap that we lose them. They do well in elementary school, they get to middle school, they don't have much support, they start to slip between the cracks. By the time they get into high school, it's almost too late, because they just kind of develop their own habits. They're not getting support at home, they're not getting support from their teachers or counselors, and that's really where we lose them. And so as a recruiter for the University of Washington, there's only one of me, and there's other people that do recruiting, like Ross. He's the unofficial recruiter, and that's not his job title. And there's several other Native faculty staff on campus that are also recruiters, non-Native and Native, that have a hand in recruiting. But back to my point is that there was only one of me, and my capacity is basically with juniors and seniors who are getting ready to apply. And so whenever I get a chance, whenever I have spare time, which is very rare because I travel so much, I try to reach out to those younger students, because the earlier we reach out to them, the better chance they have at succeeding in school and going on to college. And so for my job, like I said, I travel to all over the tribal reservations all over the state of Washington. And so a good example is yesterday I drove up to, I went to Lake Roosevelt High School, which is on the Colville Reservation, and Chilium, which is also the Colville Reservation. And so I went up there, and that's about almost a 5-hour drive from Seattle. And so I got there, and they were thrilled, they were excited. No recruiters ever come to their school. And so their graduating class of seniors this year is 9. Their junior class is about 15. So I spoke to about 24 students, but that was, to me, that's important. For other people, maybe even recruiters before me, they might not see that as a good use of our resources, because there's just so few. This university is run on numbers. It's all about numbers. If there's going to be 100 students there, we need to be there. If there's going to be 25 students there, maybe not. Maybe we don't need to be there. And that's the mindset of a lot of people here on campus. And so, for me, it was really important, and that's what drives me in this position. Is when I get there, like I said, it's almost like they look at me as if I'm a superstar. Which I'm just a normal person. I'm not anything special. But because so very few reps, they said, the teacher that I talked to in the class said that I was the 3rd rep from a university, not just the UW, but the university, since he's been there, and that's been 6 years, he said. And so they said that I don't think there's ever been anybody from the UW that actually came to the school before. And so it's important, you know, and last year I went to Lake Roosevelt, which is about an hour away from there. And that was the first year I went here. I've been here for 4 years. That was the first year I went there, which was last year, going to the college fair. And then this upcoming year, there's 2 girls from that school that got accepted. One is a Gates Millennium Scholar. The other one is just received our Muckleshoot Scholarship. And so, you know, just little things like that. You know, I went to one college fair, met 2 girls. They stayed in connection with me. I helped them with their application, and you know they're both here now. And so you know that's the reason why I do this job. That's the reason why it's important for you know not just the University of Washington, but universities all over the country to you know kind of look at the model that we use. You know, and not be so caught up in the numbers of you know let's get these numbers, let's get numbers. We need the numbers. You know, it's. If you can get one Native student into the college, that's a success because they just are on such a high uphill battle, you know, with like the things I mentioned before, self-identity, no support at home, no support at school from teachers, things like that. And so they just have all these things going against them. And so, you know, just one little thing, like I said, with my counselor, you know, all she did was brought me into her office, told me about community college, I took off from there. You know, same thing with these girls. I didn't do their homework. I didn't do their SATs. All I did was I was there for them. I let them know that this is a possibility for you. You know, maybe before that college fair, they weren't even planning on applying. Who knows? You know, but it's just those little things that matter in our communities because we don't have the numbers, you know, compared to the other, you know, races around campus. And so, you know, we just got to take advantage of those and just do it. You know, it was hard. My back was hurting. It was a 5-hour drive. It was not fun, but the you know, like I said, once I get there and I speak to the students and I just you know can tell that they're happy for me to be there. That's what drives me in this position, and that's what makes you know the University of Washington a great place because they do support a Native recruiter and a Native liaison to go out there and do those little things like that.
And once those students get here, that's where our retention plan kind of kicks in. It does kick in. The first day of school, both of those students were at our first NACM, our welcome days, yes. And welcome days is a big celebration where all the freshmen come and the returning students come to basically meet the Office of Minority Affairs, diversity staff, us, you know, we have professors there, and then you know, returning students so they can meet with people from their communities. And then the very next Wednesday, both of these students that Tommy was talking about were at First Nations, which is our largest Native American student group on campus. It's mostly made up of undergraduates. There are a few graduate students there. And so that's the group where when we're out recruiting or we're meeting with other tribal entities or meeting with education departments, we talk about that student group because they're so important because they have created the community, so we just simply support them. And support, we don't just mean funds, we mean our time. Tommy, myself, one of our counselors, her name is Candace Free, she's Seneca, and one of our other co-workers, Tia Gelhausen, is Yakima. We take our turns going to those groups, and just being there is a type of retention because they see that we actually care, we're always there, and then we kind of update them on what's going on in the university system that they might not know as students. A lot of them become our mentees, and so we teach them what we can while they're in school. We
make them talk in front of people, which is something that as Native people we're not always comfortable with. You know, like I said, raising hand in the classroom. That's not something we're accustomed to, and that's something that needs to be learned. I was never comfortable talking in front of groups until I started working here, and now it's, you know, you just got to force them, and that's what we do. We always force them, and you know, their faces turn red and everything, but you can see them grow. We see them grow from the time they become a freshman, and we make them speak, you know, forcefully. To by the time they're a junior or senior, they're out there speaking willingly. You know, and it's you know, kind of like, it's almost like the the after-school programs that we're talking about. You know, this group is like an after-school program which helps them form a community on this campus, which makes them feel comfortable, you know, in two ways. You know, like I always explain, you know, they might be coming from Colville, which is, you know, however many miles, 5-hour drive away, you know, to this big city. You know, now they have this group that they could look forward to going to every day to see natives, to do cultural activities, to help with the powwow and things like that. And that's really, you know, and we both see it. We both see it in the students as they come in. You know, they're quiet, they're content. You know, we know they're smart. They're obviously smart. You don't get into the UW without being smart. And so we see them grow, you know, because they're involved with these types of activities in the First Nations. And so that really helps with the retention.
That's one of the best parts is having the top, because then we end up hiring them. You know, they become our ambassadors. We have an ambassadors program with the recruitment and retention, our recruitment team, and so it's just funny. Like at the last welcome days, or no, the celebration dinner, which is one of our fundraising dinners, we told one of the recipients who won a scholarship, you need to learn this song with us right now, and we're going to sing it in 20 minutes. And he stepped up and he did it because he's one of our young leaders. He's one that we've been growing for a while and molding into his own leader. And now he is the co-chair of First Nations, the student group, and sings. And he's in Iceland now on a study abroad. And so that's a part of the whole like recruitment retention team that we have. Our counselor Candace advises them on which classes to take, scheduling. We have a whole study center called the Instructional Center where our students go to get tutoring. So we have this perfect pipeline from high school right now. We're trying to work into the middle school, and then we recruit them in through Tommy. They get to the University of Washington. Once they get here, we have all of us are here to help them, and then we push them through. And by the time we get to retention, you know, that's the hardest part. Is a lot of times they get homesick. Usually the second month is the hardest month because that's when midterms happen. So they try to get away from us, and so we have to kind of go and grab them again. And a lot of the stuff that we do isn't part of our job description. We say it's a part of our cultural description. Tommy and I started using that a couple of years ago. And as soon as we said it, we kind of looked at each other like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're saying. We take a lot of flack, we'll be honest, about what we do and how we do it because we have such small numbers, as Tommy was telling you. What we do is important to us. It's important for our people to see that. A lot of times we'll take trips on our own dime. We'll carpool together. We'll share a room. It's gotten to that point where we don't even care. Like we're always together traveling, so we might as well just share the space, and then that way we'll cut our costs down so that we can both go. And a lot of our leadership doesn't see that, or they don't hear it enough, I suppose. And once they get here, we say, hey, come to our office, we'll take you to lunch, or we'll feed you, or we'll do whatever we can. And then again, there's no funds for that, so it comes out of our wallet. And I don't keep tax receipts or anything, I just do it. I want my students to eat, I want them to have groceries, I want their electricity to work.
I want them to graduate.
We want them to graduate, so we'll do whatever it takes to get them done and get them graduated. And you know, that's there. I don't know if I've ever read any report that said you should use your own funds to help students graduate that aren't even from the same tribe as you, but they all matter to us. And so that's one thing we were talking about with some of our colleagues is we asked them, do they do that? And really no, they don't. Because I don't know why. I think that's just the way we're built.
It's the numbers.
Right.
It's the numbers.
Just the way
We
we're
don't
built.
have big numbers, and so, you know, like he was saying, he brought up that student who's over in studied abroad in Iceland, and who's the co-chair of the First Nations. He was actually denied as when he first applied as a freshman, you know, and I know his older brother, and so I knew him, and so I went to bat for him, did a petition for him, and because I knew he was a good student, and so but see, the University of Washington admissions didn't feel that way. Either they felt his grades weren't high enough, or whatever the reason was, he was denied. I went in there, I talked to them, I said, this is a good student, I helped him with some petition, and he ended up getting in, and it just goes to show. I mean, he's the co-chair, now he's in Iceland, studying abroad on fishery, I think it's on fisheries, right? And so, he's doing well, and that's not the only student, there's a lot of students, and that's the kind of approach I take when I'm recruiting students, is I'm not out there trying to reach numbers. I'm not trying to get as many numbers. I'm trying to reach students who are ready and are willing, and I know that can do well in college. And if they're not at that point, but they do want to go to college, I'm always there to help them. I'm there. I want Native students to go to college, whether it's Wazoo, whether it's Eastern, Western, any school that they want. I always help students, and if they're not prepared for a university, I'll be honest with them, and I'll tell them, and I won't break it to them in a hard way, but I'll just let them know that community college is a better route for them. And I explained to them that it was a great route for me, because if I would have came to University of Washington out of high school, I would have failed. I know for a fact I would have failed, because there's no way I would have been prepared for that. And so, that's the types of things that, like I said, that's not in my job description. My job description isn't to help students into any college that they want. My job description is to help students get into the University of Washington, but my cultural description is to help them to go to school, because that's what I'm passionate about. I feel like that's the biggest key to success, to help not only themselves, but their tribe and their people and their nation, and going back to their reservation, becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer to work on tribal laws and things like that. So many times these tribes have to hire people from outside because their own people, they don't have the qualifications to be in a position. And so, that's something that's really, ingrained in me, and I really have a passion. We both have a passion for, building this into something big. I'm a recruiter, he's a liaison, but, we want to build something, a model from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, all the way through college, all the way through their master's degree, to help students, succeed, and like I said, go back to their communities and help out.
And part of that is we're building a Longhouse here on the campus, Longhouse style facility on campus. The name of it is Wolfstabal, and that means the intellectual house. And so we're so excited that we're going to finally have this space on campus. It's been over 40 years. I think it's now 42 years that this project has been talked about. And the latest attempt, the current attempt, is the third try, and it's now year 7. And now that we're at year 7, we're actually breaking ground in approximately 20 days. I can't believe it. It's been something we've talked about for years. I'm not a part of a Longhouse society. I'm not Sion, but what I am is Native, and I want this facility on campus to honor the people whose land this does belong to. The Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, Snohomish, all these tribes who are around the area, this is their home, and this land was supposed to have been given back to them 151 years ago. So the fact that we're finally building this this facility is saying something. 100 years ago, it was 100 years ago, this land was supposed to be given back. And now the university is 151. And so it's just kind of funny that people forget those processes, or forget those treaties, they forget that important information. And so we're building a Longhouse, and one of Tommy's largest recruitment events is coming up the very same day.
Native American Student Day. And so I actually contacted the Duwamish tribe in order to get a name, because when I first came here, I wanted to change the name. The name is Native American Student Day, very boring, very blah. Some people don't even refer to themselves as Native American, because, we were here before this was America. And so, there's a lot of different things, within the name. Never had time, but I finally contacted someone from the Duwamish tribe who has given me name and given permission for me to use a name. I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to try, but it's higher education is what it translates into. And so they'll hopefully becoming the Duwamish chair will be hopefully be coming to the event to talk to people, because that's important, you know, and we always take the time before every event to thank the Duwamish people for, you know, any event that we have on the campus, because this was their land. This was the Duwamish, the Mupashute, the Tulalip, you know, all these tribal people, tribal nations. This was their land, and so we want to make sure, especially when it's a non-native crowd, to thank the Duwamish people and let people know that this was their land. This wasn't, you know, whoever else's land it is now. It was the Duwamish people. It still is, even though the government might have a say over it and they call it a different name. This is their land, and so we want to bring them on campus to be here for this important thing, important groundbreaking, and so they can explain, talk about their history, their struggle right now, because they're not federally recognized. Duwamish people, Chief Seattle, Chief South, who this city was named after, his tribe is unfederally recognized, which is, you know, absurd. And so, you know, we want to give them an opportunity to get that history out there, because a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't realize that, and it's, you know, a lot of people don't know a lot of history about Native people, not just Duwamish, but nationwide. And so, having this Longhouse on campus is huge, because now we have a place on campus. Now people know we are here. You know, a lot of people are trying to, I wouldn't say they're trying to, but a lot of times we're getting pushed out, you know, just like we have for years since European settlement. You know, we've been getting pushed out, we've been getting pushed out. Now we have a place on campus, right in a prime spot in the middle of campus, and so people know we're here to stay. You know, it's going to help with our recruitment. You know, I'm able to go out there and tell students that we have a Longhouse on campus. We have a place for you to be at home, away from home. You know, and it's also going to go right into retention, because now, you know, like I've been saying, kind of the theme of this whole conversation is, you know, now they have a more comfortable learning environment. You know, I'm not going to lie, the learning environment is not always easy at the University of Washington. You know, we have about 40,000 total students, 27,000 undergrad, 40,000 with the PhD and masters and everything. And so out of those, we have about 450 to 500 Native students. And so there's not very many. There's a lot compared to a lot of other universities. But for such a big university, that's a small number. And so, you know, you're going to be encountering a lot of racism, discrimination, nothing, you know, serious, but, you know, a lot of people just aren't culturally sensitive, you know, and it will come across as racism or discrimination, and maybe sometimes it is outright racism and discrimination. You know, that's a part of life on any campus, in any city, and anywhere. And so, but having this Longhouse style facility is huge, and so it's just going to speak numbers, and I can already tell, I know it's going to have an impact on the recruitment and retention. I don't think we've mentioned, but we have, the UW has one of the highest retention rates and graduation rates for Native students that come in, and so that's something we're proud of, and hopefully this Longhouse is just going to build into that and improve those numbers and get more Native students here and get them graduated, because it's, for me, you know, I'm not doing my job recruiting unless these students are graduating, you know, and that's why we take it upon ourselves to help these students when, you know, they need help, and you know, do whatever we can in our power to help them succeed and graduate, because that's the main point of coming here. It's not just, you know, I'm not just worried about admissions numbers, how many students are coming in. I'm worried about how many are graduating. And so, like I said, this Longhouse is going to be a huge part for us, and you know, not just us, but the whole Native community on campus.
And that's funny that I was just thinking about that. The graduation rate for 6 years, you know, we ought to use whomever's measure. I took me 9 years to get my first bachelor's out of the way, and I'm currently in graduate school now. But the numbers, they don't lie. The #1 school is University of Virginia, and their cohort size was 26. We're number 10, and then we could substantiate these later, or you can at home, that we're number 10 in the nation, but our cohort size is like 160. So we have a larger cohort size, our graduation rate is 70% for 6 years Native students. That's pretty amazing. We might have smaller numbers compared to Arizona or Alaska, but we are much higher than all of them with the graduation rate. And so I guess once we're getting to the point where we're getting to the end of the conversation, starting to talk about graduation, and we have the best graduation on campus. I mean, we do departments. There's the big UW one, there's your department one, and we have one just for Native American students from all schools, and it's called Ravens Feast. Ravens Feast was started by, again, my mentor Julian and Marvin Oliver when they were students. And so what they do is Marvin, Professor Oliver, will create a print just for the students, just for that year. That's pretty rare, he's a great artist. He makes just one piece.
World-renowned artist.
One piece, and we all get our own. And then no one ever gets it again. And we, as faculty and staff, Native faculty staff, we volunteer our time. So we get a little bit of money here and there, but a lot of it comes again. You pull your wallet out, here you go. And we volunteer time. We hold it out at United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, Daybreak Star, currently until our Longhouse is built. Will be finished in next October 2014. And it's so amazing, we're out on the water, we're all together, our students are excited, some are wearing their regalia, all their families are there, and what else do we add to that?
Some students just attend the Ravens Feast and not the regular big UW graduation, and that's because it's important. And I know for me, and I know Ross too, that print that I got is more important than my actual diploma that I received from the University of Washington, only because, as a Native student and all Natives, we had an uphill battle, and that it was not easy to obtain that. And I love, I cherish my diploma, but not as much as I do that print, because that just shows, I'm a rare student, we're rare. It's not rare that Native male graduates from a university. And so that print is still up on my wall in my living room. I think my diploma is in the closet collecting dust or something like that. But it really is an important thing. And Marvin Oliver, these prints, if there was a retail value on the prints that he gives you, I'd say it'd be around like $300 to $400 easy. Because he's a very well-renowned artist, but he does them all on his own for free and does it on his own dime. And he gives them to any student that registers to attend. You don't have to be enrolled in a tribe. We don't look at that kind of stuff. If you self-identify as Native, you're welcome to join, and you're welcome to receive a print. And so it's a wonderful event. Again, that's something that I use as a recruitment tool. Because a lot of students are, when they see those prints, they get really excited, and that generates excitement, and it gives them something to look forward to, other than their diploma, once they graduate. And so it's a really wonderful event. Just goes to show that, like you said, our whole Native community on campus, professors, staff members, graduate students, they all come together to help put this on, because it's a really important event to celebrate our Native students, as they go out into the world, and hopefully contribute to helping other Natives, throughout the world, in their communities or wherever they plan on going. So
that's a great point to finish on, is our relationships with everybody. We all are always together. The place where we have our graduation, they give us discount rate because they're UW grads and family of ours. They're our family. And so that's what we're talking about. From middle school, we have a model all the way through graduation. And what I love about Ravens Feast at the graduation, everybody gets a chance to speak. And the way Tommy put it perfectly, we don't need to see your enrollment card, blood quantum, lineage, any of that stuff. You just tell us, I self-identify as whatever you are. And we'll say, come, bring your family. come eat. We've got enough food. We've got a safe space for you. There's parking for elders, you know. And so we're very happy to share our information with you. I'm excited to share this, our stories. We're able to do this in a whole different way, you know, with the camera, because I'll be honest, I tried to type this up many times, and I couldn't squeeze it into a mold. I couldn't squeeze it into 17 pages. But when I'm able to talk with you and talk story and use my hands, because I use them a lot, it means something else. So I just want to say thank you.
Going back to our oral traditions, because that's what it is, you know, and just like he said, like I have all this information, and I didn't plan anything that I said in this, and I know Ross didn't either. We had no idea I came here. I just got back from OMAD late last night, you know, but all this information's in my head. It was just, how do I get it out in a paper, you know? And so they were graceful enough to offer us an opportunity to talk to you and do an interview, which is much easier because we talk a lot better than we write. And so, you know, it just, again, is going back to our oral tradition, and that's the way it's been passed down to us. You know, we didn't have anything, we didn't read anything on how to recruit or how to be a tribal liaison. You know, we go out there and we learn, and we hear from our elders who have been in education, my mentor who is in Indian education, his mentors who were all in Indian education, and you know, that's how it was passed down to us. And so, you know, we want to be able to pass that on to whoever is watching this, whoever is interested in you know, helping out with Indian education. And so we're just glad and happy we were able to do this and able to, you know, get out some information. There's so much more out there. There's so much more to talk about, you know, but that can be probably said at a later date. So thank you guys for having us, and how
Aho Gashila.